Colette this afternoon, and Colette is a pioneering figure in New York City's 1970s performative art scene. She shared her insight from her remarkable 5-decade career spanning street arts, installation, performance, mixed media, stage photography, and painting from the early 1970s to the present. Ms. Lumiere created living personas, including Justine of the Colette, is Dead Core, aka Justine, and the Victorian Punks, Mata Hari, and the Stolen Potatoes, Berlin, Countess Reichenbach, as part of her Bavarian Adventure, the House of Olympia, and post 9/11 Lumiere, which she renamed Laboratoire Lumiere after losing her legendary Pearl Street Atelier. Her ever-shifting personas allow Colette to embody and explore different aspects of herself and her art, and have become an integral part of her unique artistic vision. Colette's work in the collection of the Guggenheim, MoCA Los Angeles, and the Brooklyn Museum. Colette has been the recipient of grants from the Explorer Residency, John Simon Guggenheim, John Mitchell, Warhol, and Mary Walsh Foundations, and the National Endowment for the Arts. In 1985, she created stunning sets and costumes for the Berlin Opera. So let's welcome Colette.
Okay. So, I might wear glasses because I had an operation, so, you know, whatever. So thank you. I've just landed from the bus ride or whatever. And, oh, you saw the film already, I think?
No, the film is playing in the video room. So
oh, it's playing. Did they see it yet?
No, not
Oh,
yet.
okay, I misunderstood you. I said, oh, they saw it already. I forgot what's on the film. Okay, great, I remember a little bit. I didn't see it so often. It's not my film. It's a film, just so you know, man in his 30s made on me, and I met him through my girlfriend Jennifer Clement. Take note, she's a very wonderful writer and quite well known, and she was in New York in the early 80s and part of the scene, and then we reunited. We were not such close friends then, but we know each other from the scene. And we reunited in Zululand. We were invited, I was invited to do a project, and she was invited as a writer. So her last book, called The Promised Party, mentions me and this man, Nick, I forgot his last name, Nick Hampson, became friends with her, and he's also a musician, and he did wonderful films, kind of documentary. He's young, like before his mid-30s. And he met me in Paris because Jennifer told him to visit me. I was living there the year before. And then he came to New York at the same time Jennifer was, and we all reunited, and he said, I want to do a film on Colette. He was doing a feature on her, which still hasn't happened, but he was with actors, you know, but on me, he wanted to do a documentary. It wasn't clear whether it was going to be a full-length movie. He's very spontaneous. And somehow he managed to do this film. I was against it because, as usual, you know this, I'm all over the place. I'm a wanderer here, there, I'm flying and moving around. So they both said, you gotta do it and do it now. So that's what happened, and we'll look at the movie together, and then if you have questions, it's through his eyes, you know? But he didn't know anything about me except when he met me. So you have to keep that in mind. He did do some homework and look it up online and ask me questions. I think I hated it actually, but now I love it. I love it because it's a documentary on me, and I love that he took the trouble. And actually, now that I'm more distant from it, I don't take it so personally, like make me look better, you know, the whole thing. Or I don't want to say that in public. But I think he did a wonderful job. But there's been other documentaries, and you could find them online. So that said, what would you like? Oh, I have notes. You did ask me some questions. Maybe I'll remember. Oh, my notebook is in there. Can you, somebody get my notebook? I think there's a notebook in that other bag I left. But that's just to remind me. I usually talk on the spot. So I think I don't need notes. Did you want me to talk about my work first? Or no questions first? Okay. So maybe if I have the notes, it helps. No, I know, first of all, your major's in costumes and acting. Can you, who's?
Physical theater.
What?
Improvisation and physical theater.
Oh, all of you? Or?
It's a classes. Students costume design class.
And there's two classes.
Yes.
So you're into theater, and they are more into costumes.
Correct.
Okay, interesting. Well, like I was telling Julia, I'm not a professional actress in the standard words, but I guess I am more than most performance artists. And actually, that was one of my criticisms after the happenings, which I was not part of. I was actually too young for that. And because I felt like a lot of performance artists were so boring. So I said, acting is more interesting. So there was a lot of that in my work. That separated me in a way from a lot of performance artists. Okay, so she asked very good questions, and I read them on the bus here right before we got here. Before that, I was putting myself together, writing emails. Okay. I'm going to follow her questions because they were very helpful. I think she wanted to know, and I guess you all want to know, and then you could ask me later. Okay, that's the last question, advice, later. How do I connect and develop a performance artwork? From the initial idea to staging. I have to understand my own handwriting, it's like special language. Yeah, that's a good question. Well, I've had so many years of working, and actually I don't really have a formula for working. What I can tell you now, and I will repeat it probably, is I just follow my intuition. So when the voice calls, the inner voice or the light bulb goes on, pay attention. So that's what I did from the beginning. Okay, so I wanted to be an artist, whatever that meant. I started painting, and then soon after I started putting stuff around my environment. I don't want to say decorating. I was creating an installation, but I didn't know there was a term for that. I was creating an immersive environment. I didn't know there was a term for that. And that developed into a finished, complete work of art. And for years, I kept transforming it. But at the beginning, a lot of things happened simultaneously. At the same time, or almost at the very same time, as I was beginning to envelop myself in this artwork and becoming part of it, I was also painting the streets. And I was not aware of the art that was hip at the time because I came from nowhere, really, and I was not aware of all the well-known artists doing earth art, and street art didn't really exist then. I didn't know of that term. So I was painting the streets. And it started as a film because I have, like we talk about multidisciplinary. Yeah, I wanted to be a filmmaker, but I gave that up right away because I had a friend who was at NYU. We were very young. He had a camera, and I said, I want to do a movie about a girl that came from Mars or another planet, and she wants to communicate with her friends. So I started painting these signs, these symbols that I call my personal hieroglyphics. And actually, much later, in 1983, I wrote a song called Magic Symbols, Secret Code, and that became part of a multimedia performance. But at that time, I was just painting the streets, usually downtown or Soho. And I did it anonymously and for the film, but then I gave up. This film was too complicated, we didn't have the money, and I'm very impatient. So I said, this looks pretty good. So I decided the street art was a street art. It was art. And soon after, because I ended up at the Art Students League because I didn't know where to go, I wanted to make my art. I had a small apartment that we talked about real estate, $80 in the West Village, but I still didn't have a studio, so I went to the Art Students League, and they were a little bit behind. But I was painting in Soho, and there was a bar called the Spring Street Bar, where all the big, well-known artists were hanging out late at night and fighting and screaming and drinking. And I always had an accomplice, usually a young woman, who would help me and watch for the police. And little by little, through making friends, I found out about conceptual art, earth art, minimal art. And one night I met Smithson at one of those bars late at night, and I was with my girlfriend from the South who had a very Southern Belle accent, so she sounded really dumb, but she wasn't. So I thought he was going to have a good time. He thought that. So he walked us home, and we took him to my environment, and I was trying to tell him I was painting the streets, and I'm doing something like he's doing. So, his eyes were rolling, I think. And we took him to my environment, and he couldn't believe it. He sobered up right away, because these were the walls, okay? The entire place was done like that. And I kept transforming it. So at that time, it was completely white. I called it minimal Baroque. There was no furniture. The bed was embedded. And then as I traveled and I kept changing this environment as an ongoing artwork, like you would repaint a painting if you didn't have a canvas, another canvas, I did that with my environment for 10 years. So anyway, he woke up right away. We talked about art, and from then on at Max's Kansas City, there hasn't been a place like that. I'm sad for you, because it was a great place. Like, artists were there, musicians were there. You'd see Warhol, you'd see David Bowie, you'd see the Rolling Stone, you'd see Blondie, and you see all those artists at the bar arguing, and you could just talk to anybody. So then he introduced me as a great sculptress. So I was very happy. Good beginnings, and I got pressed for painting the streets. They didn't know who it was at first, and then some gossip woman that was my friend told them, and then it spread like wildfire, because I did it anonymously, not Banksy. I did it anonymously at the beginning. I liked the idea. Plus it was for the film, I liked the idea that who's doing that? So those were my beginnings. So how did it get this? How do I conceive and develop a performance? Okay, so I had this environment I was constructing, still developing, and I'm just telling you how it started in a way. And then one day, I had an idea. The bulb went on. And this, again, was a very naive time for me. I don't know exactly the dates, but it was pretty early on. I don't want to say how long, like 70. I was very young, and I had this space, love space, that somehow I got through students that left, and it was incredible. I wish I had it now. I had it for a very long time. I knocked on my neighbors, and I said, please, do you have a camera? And he had one of those throwaway cameras. I said, please take my picture. And then I proceeded, I put on a white sheet, and I love that idea of Delacroix's painting, Liberty Leading the People. Do you know it? So I said, I want to be like Liberty Leading the People from Delacroix. So I had the white sheet, I had a broomstick, and a flag that said red, white, and blue with my handwriting. And I was standing there, And, oh, of course, I was bare-breasted. So that said, that was my first photo performance, but I really didn't know what I was doing. I just trusted this voice, you know, like, just do it, just do it. So that was a very minimal situation, very simple, and I still have that negative. It's actually a work, and I guess it was my first, what later became called a constructed photograph, okay? So, but then when I got discovered, you know, with the environment, people came to see it, a lot of very good people. People talked about it. At first I was very shy because it was very private in a way. It was like being naked. You know, when you first do something, I don't know if any of you feel that way, even an idea or a rehearsal. I don't know, it's kind of, you're bashful at the beginning. Not everybody, but I was. But little by little, people heard about my place, and I had a big show in a big gallery in New York, Stefanati, that was going to be one of the top galleries, only men, the only woman, and I did, oh, and I was painting too, but these paintings were very unusual. They were big, I called them the sand women, because I got the idea in Jamaica. So they were big sand women, like very tall, it's taller than this, and actually this wide. Me probably, 16 of them. And in one room they were exhibited, and in another room I had well, actually I had done homage to Delacroix again, but it was not a famous gallery. It was a window, and the place was known, but not really known as a commercial gallery. So I had done that, but this was my big debut in the art world. You know, this was like, I made it now. So in 1973, I had that show, The Transformation of the Sleeping Gypsy, in their office. They took down all the mirrors, they took down everything. No, I was putting the mirrors. They took down all the shelves. So I could create this room, and I had a wall like that on the outside, and the title was The Transformation of the Sleeping Gypsy Without the Lion. I didn't have the lion, you know, after Rousseau. So I would use these themes or well-known heroines for my themes. And after that, a lot of people were asked me to do these rooms and different institutions, museums. And simultaneously, there were people that were pioneers in video art that was promoting that. You know, it was like the 70s, minimal art, conceptual art became very big. So the conceptual art lovers would like the street work. So I was commissioned. You know, usually I'd run away and almost get arrested, or my friends would get arrested. I was, in the end, commissioned by Art Tapes, which was a very well-known place, and had commissioned all the big artists you know of at the time to do street art. And they paid the police not to arrest me. This was Florence, Italy. You could do that. So I was doing both. And so I wasn't painting so much anymore because I got so busy with the rooms and the more conceptual works and using, I loved the idea of space, not being limited to the canvas, although I still love good painting. I love everything that speaks to me, you know, so I've never been that strict about the media. But every few years, we all experienced what was in and what was not in. It was very interesting how somebody very famous in the next 10 years was replaced by somebody else. And it was a whole other movement. So I don't really know how I made it through all the decades exhibiting. There were times where I were better than others, but I never stopped working and exhibiting. And even though my work didn't quite fit, even Stefanati Gallery, I don't know if you know these artists, they had painters like Malcolm Morley. I don't know if you ever heard of him. He was quite famous, and I knew him. And actually, I learned something from him, because he was one of the first photorealists that was really in at the same time as conceptual art was starting to come up. So Malcolm once said to me, and this always stayed in my head, he said, "I created monsters." And what do you think he meant by that? Okay, I'll tell you. He meant that he started this movement. He didn't want to start this movement. He did great art, and it was photorealistic, but everybody started copying what he did, and it became like a movement, and he hated the movement. So he stopped doing, it changed his art completely. He started painting much more emotionally, and it was still great art, and he still was famous, and now he's dead and nobody knows him, which freaks me out actually. But a lot of my dead friends who I looked up to are not around, men and women. So the art world is fickle. History is fickle. So I'm glad I'm here. So that said, okay, so does that answer your question in a way? Well, you can ask me again. So, and then later, okay, now we have a lot of decades to go through. This is just the beginning, so I'm giving you the root of it all. I did a lot of rooms for people. I did a lot, the street works were known, and I continued to do rooms. I continued to make artworks. I would make artworks out of this. But I was a woman. This was a problem in the 70s. The very few women that were out there was really doing work that imitated the man's aesthetics. And the feminist movement was very strong and coming out. And for some reason, the feminists did not like me. And I know why. I didn't understand it, but I know it's very clear now, because now I'm a big feminist. I'm a top feminist now, which is a complete irony. The reason being, I think I understand they were trying to make space for themselves, and they were forced into doing masculine work, you know? And I was working in a way kind of naive, but I followed my voice. I was doing work that was very feminine in most people's eyes. They call it feminine like it was a disease, okay? So they thought I was against them, which is totally ironical, and now people really recognize how important I am to the feminist movement. As far as I'm concerned, you can call me whatever you want. I do what I do. Oh, leave it there. It's for my eyeglasses. So where are my eyeglasses? Okay, better I talk with my eyes, I guess. So that said, yeah, so that went on, and every decade we'd have a new movement. Then painting came back into the picture of Holly Solomon. I may wear this once in a while just to relax my eyes. I know it's obnoxious, but I feel like a movie star. So that said, painting came back in with a gallery that started showing painting. Then people like Mary Boone you might have heard of, and then you had Keith Haring. Then you had street art with Basquiat and Keith Haring, but I'm sorry to say I was out there before, and they were very inspired by me, but it was still a men's world, so I didn't have Chauvarzi Gallery. He did not show women at the beginning, unless they were a model and very wealthy. So that said, then you have the 90s, and every decade you had something else going on. And so, and I traveled, so I invented the persona Justine, my first persona, okay? Because I was Colette, and Colette was my name. Actually, I named myself after the well-known writer. I don't know if you know her. She was amazing, Colette. And I was very young, so I said, oh, that's really great. I'll drop my name too. So I was inspired by her. And I call myself Colette, which I found out soon after is not such a great idea, because who wants to be another body's name? So I became Colette Justine for many reasons, because I died. I staged my death because by 1978, I had already influenced the commercial world immensely, because unlike most artists, I think Warhol was really one of the very few, I had a public presence because I did street art, then I started doing windows, which were a marriage between the intimate space of the rooms and the street art. Right? And they were like big light boxes. And anyway, I made objects after the rooms, you know. I would take the walls, like these were leftovers from the rooms. Oh, I'll talk about that later. So I invented this Victorian punk look. And then Fiorucci, which was like the leading hip store where everybody would go shopping, to go nightclubbing, to Studio 54. Did you ever hear of these places? I never know. Yes, you have? And the Mud Club downtown. Most of my friends were downtown and going to the Mud Club, but I happened to go to Studio 54 too. So they all went shopping there, and Fiorucci, the owner, who was well known, he had a place in Italy too, he was very hip to art and very supportive of artists. And he knew that I did these windows, and he asked me to do a window on 57th Street and right near Bloomingdale's, and everybody was going there to shop for the clubs, you know. In fact, Madonna hung out there because she was friends with the stylist. But soon after that, they saw I had already done Justine, which was the marketing genius. You know, I was already Justine, but Justine now posed in a very well-known store, so more people get to know her work and more people imitate it. So Fiorucci's designers, it took very little time. They all took a little piece of me and were selling it. But I didn't say anything, but Fiorucci noticed and asked me to do a line. So the following year, I did the Deadly Feminine line. That was my trademark, Deadly Feminine. I did a song called Deadly Feminine. And so that's my first intervention, my first persona. And then I went to Berlin, so I had to change my persona. Oh, by the way, Justine wore Victorian punk, 78 to 80, you know, like a certain look that became later steampunk, now it's called soft goth or whatever, but it originated from Victorian punk. And starting 1980 to 82, I started making these costumes, right? These uniforms, I call them Beautiful Dreamer uniforms, because I did the Beautiful Dreamer LP as Justine. I was a rock star, I was an interior designer, fashion designer, conceptualizer of products, and I was the head of my estate. But it was a conceptual work, okay? So I wasn't promoting the commercial world. I was just saying, I'm gonna die and resurrect and do what they do with Frida Kahlo and Van Gogh, make cups and everything else. So it was an art statement. It was a series, ongoing conceptual series in a way. So, okay, then I went to Berlin, so I invented Mata Hari and the Stolen Potatoes. That was, oh, this is good, you're gonna see that film. Because you'll see, he tried to pick up on, I think that's what interested him in doing a film, because he's a musician, rock star kind of. So he liked the idea of these different personas, just like some of your acting people probably do. So that's why, you'll see what we did with that. So I became Mata Hari in Berlin and the Stolen Potatoes, because at that time the war was happening. And for me, it was a mysterious time in Berlin. And so Mata Hari fit, but I didn't want to be pigeonholed as the Mata Hari, so I added Stolen Potatoes, kind of a Dada influence, because that's what they eat in Germany, as far as I knew, just potatoes, right? So then after that, I came back to New York. I was kidnapped to go to Munich for love. Didn't happen, but I found another love that kept me there. So that was, and his mother was Countess Reichenbach, and I lived on Reichenbachstrasse. So I became Countess Reichenbach in Munich, because they're big on the aristocracy anyway. So I was having fun with that, because they're very boring, actually. So, and my boyfriend was not like that. He kept saying, oh, they put me to sleep. Munich is so sleepy, a sleepy town. So I did this whole series called Dalsy for Scandal. So they were inviting me to parties to entertain them. They weren't sophisticated enough to know about art and love, but they just loved the idea of having art or having an artist from New York around. So I made a conceptual artwork, Dalsy for Scandal, and they would have to hire me to show up at their parties. So the press took it seriously. It was all over the papers. I had to change one of my phone numbers, because actually I had no interest in doing that either. Just like I have no interest to really go into the businesses that Justine did. I was not interested in really devoting my life to scandals. But it was a good idea. And I did many artworks based on that idea. So that was Munich, and there were different phases. Every persona has different phases. And like someone who's born, they evolve and they go in certain directions. But basically, they have one look. They favor certain colors. And they have different themes, you know, like a reason to be, you know. So that said, the Countess was dealing with the aristocracy in a way. Then, time to go back to New York. Enough of this. It was too boring over there. I was going to Berlin and New York, but most of the time I was in Munich. Then I go back to New York, and I hadn't been there for a while. I mean, I went there all the time, but I didn't have a permanent presence. So I noticed when I came back, a lot was going on that actually I had been involved with again. So I called my loft. Oh, I took down my loft way back before I went to Berlin. It was an artwork that evolved. Oh, you're yawning? Am I putting you to sleep? That's okay. I just want to know. You can interrupt me. I'll go on to the next thing. It's okay. I don't take it personally. I just want to make sure I don't bore you too much. So, yeah, well, now I lost my thread. Oh, I forgot to tell you I took down the environment. But I kept my loft studio near Wall Street, Pearl Street, and every time I had a persona, I would change the loft. It was different than the entire environment like that, covered with this. It had more the look of that persona, but people would co-end it. It was like an installation. So the House of Olympia had its rules. No money, no art. And it was completely politically incorrect, because again, you had the new feminist movement, and actually it turned out to be okay for me in the end, because by 1997 I had a big show of just, see, I have so many facets to my work, some people don't really know. And even then, in the 90s, people were so used to knowing about these environments, they just didn't think that I had works, even though I exhibited work, and that's how I lived. So people like Cindy Sherman did very well because they only had the photograph. Why I offered this big installation, and then they wanted that all the time, which was killing me, actually. But I always had the photographs, I had the objects, I had the light boxes. So, yeah, so when I came back, I had a show of just the photo images from all my manifestations. And that went really well, but not well enough, because I'm a restless person, and I don't like to be stuck doing the same thing. So of course I just didn't show all my photographs again and again. I went back to my multimedia works, but the photo works always existed and still exist. So that was Olympia. Oh, the rules. Okay, the Whitney Annual. I was left out of it because all the women that were included were doing very political art. And I was doing things like, my rules were art that celebrates life, and what else? Art, and elevates the spirit. And a lot of art was about rehashing the news for me. It was not interesting visually, it was negative, and I thought, we don't need art for this. Art should lift us up. We have this now. Why do we go to a museum like we go to a church to get in a better state? But apparently that was not what was in at the time, and they took me like, oh, she's not serious again. Because art that elevates the spirit, brings back chivalry and good manners. It was like, don't open my door, don't light my cigarette. I said, please open my door. Please light my cigarette. I mean, why give up this? You still can be liberated, you know? And there was so much friction, and still it's not resolved, you know, between the sexes. I mean, just relax, you know? So, yeah, we want to be liberated, but we don't want to give up certain rights. So that was my theory, but apparently it was not popular at the time. So no Whitney Annual. Okay, so that lasted 10 years, and it evolved, and I did many works, and I did a lot of works that were influenced by the 18th century. Like I would take images from Watteau and Fragonard and artists like that, Boucher, and I would colleticize them, I call, okay? So that was Olympia, and then we moved forward to Lumiere, and Lumiere was born in Berlin in 2001, I think, but I never used the name. I was ready for a new persona, but I said, I don't feel like Lumiere. So I just let it be on the side, and then September 11th, in my neighborhood. And I broke in my loft, and I heard all these messages on the machine. Are you alive? We think we're dead. There's an article in the German papers, Colette is dead. So I laughed. I said, okay, now I'm Lumiere. And I became Lumiere, and Lumiere had another look, and they all had a special color. At the beginning, I had pink hair. I was wearing pink all the time. The other ones had different colors, like Mata Hari was gold and black, and whatever. So that lasted for a while till I got thrown out of my loft, and then I became Laboratoire Lumiere, because my life became even more experimental, and that was the right name. It was a very nomadic, and still is a very nomadic situation. So, yeah, and this continues till now. I'm still on the first question. I must have answered others. Role of the costume. Oh yeah, I think I explained that a little bit. Well, for me, dressing up is a very organic thing, you know, and each persona kind of called a certain look. First I was Colette. Actually, I was already well known as Colette for having a look. I have that, you can find it online. There was a big show at Rizzoli's called Fashion Art. It was one of the first shows. Rizzoli's on Fifth Avenue. They invited famous photographers, famous fashion designers, and famous artists, and I was a young one. It was like the big guys, like Lichtenstein and Warhol, Reichenbach, and the big designers, and Karl Lagerfeld stole my room. Yes, because he was Karl Lagerfeld. That was another thing that made me be Justine, you know? Like artists are supposed to be on a higher pedestal, but the fashion, okay, whatever. I have nothing against fashion, by the way. I happen to like it, but I didn't like that. So I became ragdoll last minute. I had planned a beautiful installation, but I became ragdoll, and I still managed to go in the window and all over the store. And my look, which was from Canal Street, those things you wear, like when you have problems with your back, orthopedic, corsets and white gauze, ragdoll. So that was a look, and it was publicized. And then I became Justine the Victorian Punks, so I was a little more punk. And I had a band called Justine and the Victorian Punks. So you could look that up too. I did a record, it's still being played. It was a joke, because I was posing as a rock star, but the record is still popular. Okay, so I did that. A lot of things were collaborations too. Okay, advice for emerging performers? Forget it. That's what I told when I was really young, and I was invited to do this installation, and I already had a big show of my street art in 1974 at the Norton Museum of Art. But I woke up in the middle of the night, and I painted the whole outside and the Federal Highway, and then the police came, and then the director was there in the morning, and this was really magical, because it was Friday the 13th, and it was an eclipse. And I was sleeping there on the staircase, and above me was this relief. It's still there if you go there. Inspiration. And then the light was going on me, and then this cat out of nowhere ends up on my chest. And the police and the director come. Colette, you didn't tell me you're going to do this. It was a big scandal. But why am I bringing this up? Oh, because then they interviewed over and over again. And one of them said, what advice do you give a young artist? I said, forget it, marry rich. But I was joking, actually. I love my life, and it's great being an artist. But you have to love being an artist. Oh, that's one of the things, you know, it says how. And working across disciplines, I think I discussed that. And how do you create all this? How do you do this? Okay, so it's always the same advice. Be yourself. 2, don't do it if you don't really want to do it, and don't not do it because somebody else tells you, oh, you got to make a living or whatever, okay? Or make a living and do it. Do whatever works for you. You know, it always comes down to that. And forget the movements. They're always going to tell you, don't do art for the movements. Don't do art to fit in. You know, do it from here. Because if I wouldn't have done anything, nothing was fitting in. And I still managed to still be here, you know, so, and also it feels better. It's part of your evolution. I didn't bring this up, but I was very interested in metaphysics when I was young, and I still am. And so in the end, you want to feel like you're evolving. You want to feel good about yourself. And this is part of it, growing, you know, and the art is a vehicle. It manifests to others, but it also helps you. But if you're just imitating, oh, they're doing stripes now, so I'm going to do stripes so I can get a show. Well, you might as well sell some bagels or something, you know. So, any questions? I'm done. I answered a lot of them, actually.
I have one.
Yes, you could have two.
In like New York City, it's like, what's like, is there still like an art scene there, or?
Oh, that's a very good question.
Yeah.
See, I could stay here for hours, and the irony is I didn't want to talk when I was young. I just didn't want to talk, and now I'm talking away. Okay, everything's a long answer, but I'll try to make it short. That's a very good question, because for the last, I think Jim knows, Julia probably knows, there's been movements every few years, right? And in New York, like this, one day you're in, one day you're out, you know?
Yeah.
But the last decade, I happened to be invited in Paris, you know, 1 year, 2 years ago, and I stayed there for a few months. It was a residency. And I had younger artists all around me. I was the oldest one. They were in their early 30s. And some straight, some women, some gays, some trans, all kinds, right? And I made friends with all of them. We were really kind of a little commune because the French are not very generous. So inviting you places, like they didn't, we were in very evolved and special residency, but they didn't like invite us to special dinners like the DA did in Berlin. So bottom line is, my friend on my right hand was a very good friend, a young, good-looking guy, straight. And then the one on the left was a gay guy, very sweet. They're all wonderful. They were all wonderful, actually. And the one above was Australian. They're all characters. You could look them up. Just look up Explorer, the time I was there, 2023, 24. Oh, what is his name? He was really a trip. And he was a they. He was a they. He insisted on it. Okay, whatever. I'm happy with everybody, you know? But the problem is, and I told them all this, you know, we would get together and we'd have nice exchanges, very open, you know, because we were all trying to find our way in Paris. It was not easy. And we were all respected. That's why we got the grant. So I said to them, you're all younger, but every few years there seems to be a movement. I don't see any movement now. What is it? So they all answered, straight, gay, they, whatever. Politics. This is very unusual. This is a very strange time, for better and for worse. In a way, it's very open now, and in a way, the same prejudices the marginal people were getting, now straight people like that poor straight good-looking guy, he couldn't get a show because he was straight and good-looking, and you know, he was like freaking out, and we all, you know, we could all laugh, you know, because we didn't care who was what, you know, and that was wonderful. And that's the way I was brought up. And my friend Jennifer, who goes back to the club days, you should read the book. She wrote the book, Widow Basquiat, that now Dua Lipa promoted, and she's got millions of hits, but the new book, I'm in it too, by the way, but a little bit. So, yeah, we talk about all this, and we said, when we were in the clubs, we didn't care who was black, white, gay, straight, they, drag queen. We didn't even think about it, you know, color, whatever. We just didn't care. But now it's made to be such an issue, and I think it creates more separation. But for me, it's a problem, and I'll tell you, it's a strange problem, and I tell this to all my gay trans friends and whatever they are. I don't care, and I get yelled at by my gallery's staff. Don't call them she, don't call them he, don't call them, you know, I say, I don't care, I love everybody, everybody is the same to me. But, you know, this kind of restriction, for me, is strange, you know, but that's the way it is now, okay? I have a problem sometimes because, thank God, there are gay curators, and I met one a couple of weeks ago, But it's getting to be the other extreme now. So I said, what about me? The feminists rejected me. I was always friends with every freak in town. And now I'm too straight, whatever. You know, call me whatever you want. I don't care. But look at the art, not, you know, but it's the same thing. They look for minimal, they look for conceptual, they look for bad painting. And now they're looking for you to be something that they never accepted before. And I find that totally strange. So that's the trend now. And I say, ride the wave. But so far, I'm okay now too, actually, because the feminists are realizing how much I've done for feminism. So maybe I can get away, you know, and stay on top of the wave, you know. Does that answer your question?
Yeah,
that was a very good question.
Thank you, I appreciate
Yeah,
that.
thank you.
I'm curious, what do you do like now as a career? What do you do now as a career?
What am I doing now? That's a very bad question. No, it's a great question. Because actually, I love that question because I'm torn is what I'm doing now. I'm really challenged, you know, because I have such a long history. And I finally, and I didn't, you know, I don't think for me anyway, it never helped me to force something, like force success, force a show, force an artwork. It happened when it wants to happen, unfortunately and fortunately. So what happened the last years is I was really in a bad way when I came back from Germany. I went back to Germany in 2015, 20. I mean, I would come back, have a great show, but my presence was back in Berlin most of the time. I was in a bad way because as an artist, storage is a big issue. You know, acting, maybe you should act because you don't have to wear, well, unless you have a lot of costumes. But anyway, yeah, but all of a sudden, I was as down far as you could get, and a young curator discovered my work, you know, and long story short, he got me in the gallery I'm in, and now I've been represented by them, and they did great shows, but now it's still we're still on 1984, and I've done a lot of work up till now, and right this minute, I'm in limbo because I'm in between places. I have a lot of material, so I'm doing what I can. All my life, I've recorded. I stopped painting for a while. Sometimes I go back to it. Like the last show actually had paintings from Berlin. So I never gave up painting because, like I said a long time ago, the medium that I use is not as important as the fact that I turn it into art. So there's a big way of creation here, you know, choice. But so I always kept the drawings because they're nomadic. You can do them anywhere. So I do this drawing, and also the LPs. I do album covers that record my life because in '78 I had a band. Actually, I had a few bands, Justine and the Victorian Punks, and I had Beautiful Dreamers, Art on Stage, Matahari and the Stolen Potatoes. We did a potato song. And so I always recorded my life in albums. So I gave it a break now because I'm so moving all over the place, but those I always do. And I'm craving, I started to do work in Paris and I still haven't finished. So I have a series going on. I have, you know, so I'm looking for the right location, but it's a process for me anyway. You know, art is a process. It's not like an artwork that ends or begins or ends. And actually, I look at life that way, you know. I don't think life is over. I just look at everything as a process.
A quick question about your personas and your performances or installations. How much is research and how much is improvisation?
How much is research?
And how much is improvisation?
100% improvisation. Even Hommage to Delacroix. I look at it now and I go, what was I thinking? I went to the Louvre, you know, and I saw the real painting. It's huge. I don't know, has anybody seen it? It's huge. And it's dark, and I'm scared of dark colors. I ran out of the room, and there was Jericho, and I'm still having nightmares. And my Hommage de la Croix was like soft and pink and white, and I thought she had one breast out, but actually she had two. So, but the Sleeping Gypsy, okay, I had that in my head. So, no, I'm not so much into research. I mean, it has its value, don't get me wrong. I'm just saying how I work. It's very intuitive. It's like, you know what it really is like? Mediumship. I have to be there to receive the message and focused enough to deliver it and trust myself enough that I can deliver it. Then you always find a way. Does that answer your question?
Totally.
Yeah. I mean, I still look up who's Ophelia, but I did Ophelia because I knew who she was, you know, things like that. Like Persephone, I did. And every decade, there's an emphasis that changes the direction. You know, like in the beginning, I did all these tragic heroines, but I don't go there anymore. I had enough tragedy. So, anybody else?
Yes, Colette, will you change your persona again?
Will I?
Yes.
I did, and I forgot. That's a very good question, too, because when you look at the movie, well, that I could talk for hours about that alone, the experience. Well, maybe I'll send Julia some information from my point of view, and then after the movie is over, or maybe before, you can explain. Who's calling? I don't want to talk to you. Okay, 2021, okay? I came back from Berlin. I think I mentioned I had a real storage problem. I was throwing stuff away, and to make a long story short, I got saved by these two young men that helped me. They were working for a gallery that had a lot of money, but it closed. And they said, we're out of a job, but we want to help you. We know your work, and we love it. We're going to help you. And, you know, they started a Kickstarter. Long story short, we were meeting one evening trying to figure out how do we go about this Kickstarter. I said, I'm sick of Lumiere. I want a new name. So Kanta Murakami, who now works for one of the big galleries downtown, he looked it up, Colette, and it said People of Victory. So I said, okay, that's my new name now, and I wrote it down, but I didn't want to give up Lumiere because, number one, I'm Lumiere everywhere, so now I have to change everything. My emails, my name on the social media. But two, it's like transition, and so now, actually, I am People of Victory. I don't know if you get emails. Sometimes I answer Laboratoire Lumiere, and sometimes I answer People of Victory. So, actually, I'm People of Victory. And you know what People of Victory is? It's the sum of all parts. It's all of them. But I forget to use it sometimes because I'm so used to Lumiere. But he actually pushed it in the film. That film was done in a very short time. He didn't know about my art, and he was so, I mean, you have to be impressed with somebody like that. I don't want to do it. Nobody wanted to do it. I go to Maine and hide in the summer. I don't let anybody there. It's like my sanctuary. I don't want to see anybody. I'm a country girl. He convinced me to go with the gang, Jennifer, her daughter, his ex-girlfriend, his sister. We all went, and somehow within a few days he did that film. And he edited it later, and he had it done a few months later. And it won some awards, and it's still out there. Too bad now he's like so busy with his rock career, I kind of put it on the side, because I'm sure it could be shown a lot more than it is. So I'm glad we did it, because, you know. So is that, you got it? Thank you, because I forgot.
I have to say, because, just
Yes.
to say, I love your look and the hat.
Oh, thank you. You know, I wear my hat. First of all, I had no time to, I cut my bangs in the latest. I don't comb my hair. A hat is a perfect solution. I'm going to the hairdresser before I go to Berlin. But that's, you know, that's one reason. But I love hats. I love dressing up. So again, about dressing up. Don't dress up to dress up. Dress up if you feel like it, and dress how you want. I mean, fashion, I don't know. Okay, if you like the style of the time, okay, you can do it. But don't go crazy. Just, you know, if you want to wear jeans and a t-shirt, you feel good, wear that. Oh, wear that. That's beautiful. Okay. So any more questions? I mean, it's all my opinion anyway. Any more questions? I'm very curious about the film. I wish I could watch it with you. It would be interesting to hear your feedback. Because, you know, I had to announce it at the festival. And I had to talk for him because he was in London performing somewhere, or Berlin, I don't know. So, yeah. Well, we'll continue the conversation.
child and what kind of a student you were?
What kind of?
Child and student.
Oh, child.
Yeah.
Oh, that's another story. I was what do you call it, a brat. I was a real brat. I did my first street art when I was a few years old, and there was a film somewhere, which I would love to get, but I'm not in touch with family. So I used to go in the middle of the sidewalk when I didn't have my way, and lay with my stomach down right in the middle of the intersection and yell on the top of my lungs, "I'm bored." My first street art. So any more? Or you want to tell me something?
Well, I think some folks might have to go to their next.
Okay. Oh, yeah, you have to. Are you in charge of that? I can't tell who's a student. Oh, I don't know. I can't tell. You could always learn. You're always a student of life, right? Oh, thank you.